Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And what makes success? Well, part of that definition is financial, right? And I think especially as business owners, as entrepreneurs, we're always looking for additional resources that we can find out there. And so we're going to have a great conversation today about real estate investing in multifamily properties. So please join me in welcoming Rod Khleif to our program today. Welcome, Rod. How are you?
Oh, I'm great, Deb. Let's have some fun today.
Perfect. Well, let me tell folks just a little bit about you, and then we will dive into this. So Rod Khleif is a multiple business owner and philanthropist who is passionate about business, high performance, real estate, and giving back. As one of the country's top real estate and peak performance luminaries, he has also owned over 2,000 properties. He is also the author of How to Create Lifetime Cashflow Through Multifamily Properties. So again, Rod, welcome to our program.
No, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Great, great. Well, you have a fascinating background. And so tell us a little bit more about how it is that you got to where you are today.
Sure. Well, I'm going to go way back, Deb,
Okay.
because it'll lend some
It's a
framework
big
to the
part of the
conversation.
story. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm a Dutch immigrant. I was
Okay.
born in the Netherlands, think wooden shoes and windmills. And I immigrated when I was 6 years old with my brother Albert, my mother's Vantje, and we came across on a big ship. I remember my mother crying when she saw the Statue of Liberty, and
Oh,
and we ended up ultimately in Denver, Colorado. And
that's
we
my
didn't
stomping ground. Mm-hmm.
yeah, we didn't have much growing up. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, I remember we shopped at an expired food store. Believe it or not, they had that, and
Mm-hmm.
we drank powdered milk with our cereal in the morning because it was cheaper than real milk. And trust me, it sounds better than it is. And then my clothes came from the Goodwill of the Salvation Army all the way through junior high school
Mm-hmm.
until I was 14. I was tall for my age, and I lied about my age to get a job at Burger King so that I could make my own money and ultimately
Mm-hmm.
buy a car and definitely buy my own clothes. And
Mm-hmm.
now, I'm sure you've got listeners that had it harder than I did, but I knew I wanted more. And luckily, my
Mm-hmm.
mom had an incredible work ethic, and so she babysat kids so we'd have enough money to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And we always had a house full of kids. And she was self-taught, but she was a bit of an entrepreneur. So she actually invested in the stock market
Oh,
successfully in IPOs,
wow.
and she also invested in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And her first real estate acquisition was the house right across the street from us that she bought when I was about 14 for
Mm-hmm.
$30,000 from a family named the Jewels. And then when I was 17, she told me she'd made $20,000 in her sleep, that the house had gone up in value $20,000. And this one was when 20,000 was a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "You made 20,000, you didn't do anything?" And I said, "Screw college, I'm getting into real estate." So
Yeah.
I got I got my real estate broker's license right
Mm-hmm.
when I turned 18.
Okay.
So back then you could actually be a broker with education.
Mm-hmm.
And now you need some experience to be
Mm-hmm.
a broker, but
Mm-hmm.
I could have had my own office if I wanted. And I was smart enough to go work for someone
Mm-hmm.
else. But my first year in real estate, I made about $8,000. My second year, I made about $10,000. But my third year, and I was still living at home, my third
Mm-hmm.
year, I made over $100,000, which
Well,
back in 1980 was some pretty decent change.
and you were a
So
teenager.
yeah, yeah. And so what happened between year two and year three that
Mm-hmm.
caused me to 10x my
Mm-hmm.
income
Mm-hmm.
is the question I get asked. And what happened was I met a guy, actually it was the broker that I was working for,
Mm-hmm.
that taught me about the importance of mindset and psychology, how
Mm-hmm.
really 80
Mm-hmm.
to 90% of your success in anything is your mindset and your
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
psychology. And then so fast forward to today. I've owned, as you mentioned, over 2,000 houses that I've rented long term. I
Mm-hmm.
had 500 in Denver at one time,
Mm-hmm.
actually. And then, you know, uh, I now own thousands of apartment units.
Mm-hmm.
In 2006, my net worth went up about 16 million dollars while I slept. And you might say, wow. And I said, wow. And I thought I was a real estate god. I
Mm-hmm.
thought that, I could do no wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when that happens,
Yeah.
God or the universe
Goes
will,
fuck.
yeah, will give you a smack on the side of the
Mm-hmm.
head.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was 2008 and nine for me. And I ended up losing $50 million in 2008 and nine, conservatively.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what I'm known for talking about on my podcast, and I'm blessed to host the largest real estate
Mm-hmm.
podcast really in the world for
Mm-hmm.
commercial real estate. And the reason it's so successful is I spend a lot of time talking about mindset and
Mm-hmm.
psychology, because
Mm-hmm.
that's really
Right.
how I was able
Mm-hmm.
to have 50 million to
Mm-hmm.
lose in the first place, and maybe more importantly, how I was able to recover from that.
Mm-hmm.
And and so, fast forward to today, like I say, I've got thousands of apartment units, and so happy to drill down on some of the strategies that I
Mm-hmm.
utilized to have 50 million to use in the first place, and maybe more importantly, the strategies I used to recover from
Mm-hmm.
losing that. And so,
Mm-hmm.
would you like me to, maybe
I
elaborate
would.
on that a little bit?
Yeah,
Okay,
because
all
I
right.
think, that's the thing, we all can talk about how we got rich, but when there's issues, so many times we don't want to talk about it, but it's of course how we learned from that that is the most important.
Yeah. So, by the way, if you're listening and maybe you're in the rat race, or you have a job but you don't have the freedom that you want, maybe even own a business but you don't have the freedom that you want, I think these strategies will help you, because they're not only strategies I use to recover, but they're also the strategies I use to, like I say, to have it in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're not driving, you might want to take a couple of notes, because they're
Mm-hmm.
they're 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 simple but they're profound. So
Mm-hmm.
the first thing is you've got to figure out exactly what it is that you want. And Napoleon Hill in his book Think and Grow Rich calls it a burning desire. You've got to create a burning desire, because and that starts with goal setting. And so,
Mm-hmm.
like, if
Mm-hmm.
if you come to one of my boot camps, I've got I do a virtual 2-day boot camp every couple of months,
Okay.
and in fact, I've got one coming up on November 1st and 2nd, depending on
Mm-hmm.
when you're listening to this. And I'll give you a great deal if you want to come. It's like ridiculous, like $47.
Woo!
But be that as it may, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't sell anything there either. So it's
Mm-hmm.
2 days of training with nothing
Mm-hmm.
being sold for
Mm-hmm.
$47. But be that as it may, the first thing we do is goal setting.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, how do you get anything if you don't know
Mm-hmm.
what it is? And so, and I call it goal setting on steroids, because that's
Mm-hmm.
really what it is. And so, um, and because that's what's going to create that burning desire. And a lot of people have fear, or they have
Mm-hmm.
limiting beliefs. And we're going to talk about that a little more in a minute. But that's how you push through that fear. That's how
Mm-hmm.
you push through
Mm-hmm.
those limiting beliefs, is to know what it is you want, and have a
Mm-hmm.
compelling, measurable goals.
Mm-hmm.
And so you do the goal setting. And then the next piece is, and then this is what I did when I lost everything in 2008 and 9. I reassociated with my goals,
Mm-hmm.
because I thought I was set for life. And
Mm-hmm.
now this is after a couple of months of hiding under a rock and feeling sorry for
Right.
myself,
Mm-hmm. You
because
got to
I
lick
thought I
those
was
wounds. Mm-hmm.
right. And then I did my goals, and reassociated with them
Mm-hmm.
again. But then the next piece is you've got to make a decision. And I don't mean dip your toe in the water. I don't mean 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I
Mm-hmm.
mean I
Mm-hmm.
mean a decision mean it's done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
the Latin root for the word decision means to cut off.
Ah,
So for
okay.
an example of a real decision would be, if you're going to attack the island, you burn your ships, because you're taking their damn
Right. You're
ships home.
taking the
Okay. You're not.
island. Mm-hmm.
That's it. You're
Mm-hmm.
you're 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 taking their ships home. You don't need yours anymore. That's
Mm-hmm.
a decision. It's done. You're
Mm-hmm.
committed.
Mm-hmm.
And once you're committed, and the Latin root for the word decision means to cut off, by
Mm-hmm.
the way.
Mm-hmm.
And so once you're committed, you're like a train on a track. And if you're not committed, you're going to get knocked off track.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the
Mm-hmm.
decision has to be a firm
Mm-hmm.
decision. Um, and then once you've made that decision, you've got to take that first step.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Martin Luther King said, you take that first step in faith, the next step will be revealed.
Mm-hmm.
Even Lao Tzu, thousands of
Mm-hmm.
years ago, said the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a
With
single
ones.
step. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it can be the biggest step of your life,
Mm-hmm.
but you've got to take that step.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people fear failure.
Mhm.
So they won't take that step.
Mhm.
And, especially if you're analytical. And
Mhm.
listen, I love you. And if you're listening, you're analytical, you're some of the most
Mhm.
successful students that I have in my program,
Mhm.
because my business is, there's a lot of there's an empirical component to my
Mhm.
business, a lot
Right.
of numbers. But you know how you have to check off every box before you make a move. Well, you can't do that if you want to be
Right. Like
successful.
you got to just jump.
Yeah. You have to take that first step,
Mhm.
because and you may not see the whole road. And just remember this analogy. You can drive all the way across the United States at night with your headlights only seeing, 50 feet in front of
Mhm.
you, and you can make it. You may have obstacles,
Mhm.
but other people have done it before you.
Mhm.
It's the same way with the business that I teach,
Mhm.
multifamily investing, and pretty much any business. But you've got to take that
Mhm.
first step. And the thing that you can't do is uh, is fear failure.
Mhm.
I call them seminars. That was a $50 million seminar. It was an expensive freaking seminar, but I call them
Right.
seminars
Right.
because it's
Mhm.
only it's only a failure if you don't get up or you don't get the
Right.
lesson.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and um and so I've built 29 businesses so far in my
Mhm.
career. I was shocked when I counted how many there were, and several worth tens of millions of dollars.
Mhm.
I've got two right now that are, but
Mhm.
most were spectacular flaming seminars. Okay,
Mhm.
we
Mhm.
we we fail our way to success.
Mhm.
Don't fear failure. Fear
Mhm.
regret.
Mhm.
Fear being in the same place you are right now,
Mhm.
1 or 2 years from now, unless you absolutely freaking
Mhm.
love where you are right now. So
Mhm.
fear that. Fear
Mhm.
regret. There was this nurse in Australia, Deb, named Bronnie Ware,
Mhm.
and she was a hospice nurse,
Mhm.
and so she took care of patients when they were about to
Mhm.
die, and she asked them a question, and the question was, "Do you have any regrets?" And she wrote a book about it. It's a bestseller, something like The
Mhm.
5 Regrets of Dying or something
Mhm.
like that. And you know what the number one regret was? Not living the life I could have lived, living someone else's life, not
Right.
doing what I know I'm
Mhm.
capable of.
Mhm.
I can't think of anything worse than that.
Mhm.
Fear that. Don't fear
Mhm.
failure.
Right.
Um, right? And so, and a lot of people have fear, and they have those limiting beliefs I
Mhm.
mentioned. And let's talk about, so what is fear?
Mhm.
F everything and run. That's what a
Mhm.
lot of people think it is.
Mhm. Right.
Or false evidence appearing real. That's another
Mhm.
analogy. I think that's accurate. But I
Mhm.
like to think it's face everything and rise, because what mitigates fear is massive action.
Mhm.
If I'm sleeping and now us achievers, we call fear stress, okay, but
Mhm.
it's fear. And if I'm sleeping at night and I wake up with some stress, I
Mhm.
will get up and write something down towards
Yeah.
its attain, towards dealing with it, because
Okay.
it mitigates the fear. Or I'll
Mhm.
give myself a note, but I'll
Right.
take some
Right.
action, because
You
action mitigates
acknowledge
fear.
it.
Well, not just acknowledge
Mhm.
it, actually do something
Right.
towards correcting it.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
so taking action
Mhm.
of some
Mhm.
sort. And then let's talk about limiting beliefs for a minute.
Mhm.
So when I immigrated this country, I didn't speak English, and I got thrown into
Mhm.
school, and I found out what bullies were for the first
Mhm.
time. And my mom, and so I got beat up occasionally. And then my
Mhm.
mom, proud Dutch woman that she was, thought it'd be a great idea to send me to school in wooden shoes and those leather shorts the Germans wear for Oktoberfest.
Oh.
So of
Oh
course
dear.
I got my ass kicked again,
Mhm.
and the bullies would chase me home, and she'd chase him off with a fly swatter. So the next day, ass beaten, and
Mhm.
and that coupled with getting embarrassed by this girl I had a crush on the playground, stuff that happens to
Mhm.
everybody, caused me to believe that I wasn't good enough.
Mhm.
And I used to ask myself, how can I show them I'm good enough?
Mhm.
Which of course presupposed that I wasn't. Now, a
Right.
lot of people have limiting beliefs
Mhm.
like this. So if you're listening and you're consciously aware of
Mhm.
maybe you have something, you don't feel
Mhm.
like you're good enough, you're not
Mhm.
smart enough, you're not old, you're too old, you're too
Mhm.
young, you're not analytical enough. That was
Mhm.
another one of mine. If you're
Mhm.
consciously aware of
Mhm.
this, one of these,
Mhm.
and then sometimes you're not consciously aware, and I can't help that. But if you're consciously aware of it, I would tell you to drag it out into the daylight when it pops up. Look at it with your adult
Mhm.
rational mind, and recognize that it's BS. There's a reason the acronym for belief systems is BS, is because
Mhm.
99% of them are BS,
Mhm.
but we
Right.
believe they're real, and they can impact our entire lives.
Mhm.
And so, if you drag them out in the daylight, you look at them with your adult rational mind, you recognize that they're BS. And if you
Mhm.
do that enough, they will diminish and go away. I mean, I used to be afraid to, raise my hand in front of a class of 10 people, and now I speak in front of thousands of people a year,
Mhm.
and typically in flip-flops. I just had
Mhm.
an event this weekend with a few hundred of my students for 2 days.
Mhm.
So that's dealing with limiting beliefs. The next thing let's talk about is focus. Um, so focus is power,
Mm-hmm.
and what you focus on gets larger, both positive or negative.
Mm-hmm.
So I get asked sometimes, I need to, how do I get out of student loan debt? And I say,
Mm.
wrong question. How do you make so much money that the debt's irrelevant is the question you should be asking.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
They asked Mother Teresa if she was anti-war. She said, no, I'm pro-peace.
Mm-hmm. Right. You turn
And
it
you get
to a positive.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And And so, whatever you focus on gets larger. And I'm going to tell you, and focus is power. The most successful people on the planet have the highest degree of focus. Look at people
Mm-hmm.
like Elon Musk,
Mm-hmm.
Bezos, people like that. They have incredible focus.
Mm-hmm.
And my podcast. This is going to sound like I'm bragging, but there's a reason I'm bringing this up. My podcast, I think, is approaching 30 million downloads,
Mm-hmm.
and I listen to two podcasts: Joe Rogan
Mm-hmm.
and Tim Ferriss.
Mm-hmm.
I try to get both sides of the aisle. I'm
Mm-hmm.
definitely
Mm-hmm.
heavy on one side, but I try to keep some balance.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And on Tim Ferriss's show, he interviews the best of the best in the world at their respective
Mm-hmm.
walks of life. Best actors like Jamie Foxx, Ed
Mm-hmm.
Norton, Hugh Jackman, Arnold, billionaires like Ray
Mm-hmm.
Dalio, heads of the biggest companies in the world
Mm-hmm.
like Zuckerberg, athletes like Michael Phelps and NBA, NFL players. And he deconstructs their success.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating conversation. I don't believe I'm not aligned with them politically, but
Mm-hmm.
I love the conversation.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
and I started to hear a pattern, Deb. They almost all meditate. What
Mm.
does meditation enhance?
Mm-hmm.
Focus.
Mm-hmm.
See, focus is power. And so make sure you pay attention. And, I don't know about you, but I'll be watching Netflix and I'll be scrolling through stupid social media on my
Mm-hmm.
phone, which kills your
Squirrel.
focus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's super important you pay attention to focus.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the next piece is playing to your strengths.
Mm-hmm.
So in my world of multifamily real estate investing, it's a
Mm-hmm.
team sport. I
Mm-hmm.
bought 2,000 houses mostly by myself, but you don't buy large apartment complexes
Right.
by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of hats you can wear. You could be the person that finds the deals. You could be the
Mm-hmm.
analytical person that underwrites the deals. You could be the person that coordinates it all.
Mm-hmm.
You could be, the person that raises the money. You could be the
Mm-hmm.
person that does the asset management after you purchase the asset and manages the property management company. There's just a lot of hats, and pretty much there's something for everybody, I guess is
Mm-hmm.
my point. But what I'll tell you is to play to your strengths,
Mm.
because your strengths are your greatest assets. And if you're playing to your strengths, and so again, I would say play to your strengths and hire, align, or partner for your weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
And when you play to your strengths, you're doing what you enjoy because you're good at it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if you're doing what you enjoy, work is play, and you candidly never work another day in your
Mm-hmm.
life. So play to your strengths. And
Mm-hmm.
when you play to your strengths, you're going to be passionate about it. And passion is required to influence people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, passion is also the fuel. Passion breeds creativity and
Mm-hmm.
innovation. And, when you have a setback, um, passion will get you through it. Okay. It's just a speed bump. It doesn't derail you or stop you completely. So play to your strengths. Super, super important. The next thing I'll chat about is your peer group. You've heard
Mm.
the saying, you show me your five best friends,
Mm-hmm.
I'll show you who
Right.
you are. And it's
Mm-hmm.
absolutely accurate in every
Mm-hmm.
aspect of your life, your health. You
Mm-hmm.
show me your three or four best friends,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be like them in your health,
Mm-hmm.
your happiness,
Mm-hmm.
your relationships, and
Mm-hmm.
definitely your finances.
Mm-hmm.
And so choose carefully. And here's the problem. Most people default to peers that they went to school with or that they
Mm-hmm.
work with. And very often, some of those people will have their own fears and limiting
Mm-hmm.
beliefs that they'll project onto
Right.
you.
And they
Um,
drag you down.
and they drag you down or they
Mm-hmm.
hold you back.
Mm-hmm.
And or they naysay you
Mm-hmm.
about what you're trying to do. Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
and and sometimes it's family. And
Mm-hmm.
so I would encourage you to proactively choose your peers,
Mm-hmm.
and choose people that will lift you up.
Mm-hmm.
I remember a few years back I formed a mastermind, and I had 16 people show up here at my house, and it was just because I wanted to be around people that thought what I thought was hard was easy. And it turned into the
Mm-hmm.
largest multifamily mastermind in the world, really, probably 40 billion in assets in there. And again, I did it just to be around people that I thought was
Mm-hmm.
hard, that I thought was hard
Mm-hmm.
was easy. And you can do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever you want to get into, find meetup groups or groups
Mm-hmm.
like certainly in real estate, there's tons of them,
Mm-hmm.
multifamily, and because a rising tide lifts all
Mm-hmm.
ships.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be around people that aren't threatened by your
Mm-hmm.
success, that
Right.
encourage your success. So I'll brag for a minute. I've got a coaching program. They're called my Warriors, and that was the event I
Mm-hmm.
literally just had this last
Mm-hmm.
weekend. I had a few hundred of them in Phoenix, and those students now own about 300,000 multifamily units under my tutelage.
Mm-hmm.
They own thousands of self-storage units, student housing, senior
Mm-hmm.
housing,
Mm-hmm.
mobile home parks, industrial flex space. I mean, they own all this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and the reason is the group, and every one
Mm-hmm.
of them says it.
Mm-hmm.
We have a closing almost every single day where they're
Mm-hmm.
buying something, and everyone's praising them and
Mm-hmm.
validating them,
Right.
and we did an analysis of these deals, and I presented it at this event this weekend. 98% of the deals were done between warriors,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's the power of peer group. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was losing everything in 2008 and 9. I was in Tony Robbins Platinum Partnership, which is a high level
Mm-hmm.
mastermind. And by the way, one of the reasons I'm so enthused and interested in mindset and psychology is I spent 22 years following him around the planet. I was on his
Mm-hmm.
team for
Mm-hmm.
8 years, and he's the best in the world at
Mm-hmm.
mindset and psychology. And so but I was in his mastermind, and I was through the right when the crash was happening. Oh
Mm-hmm.
wait, and I was around people that were thriving then. Okay, they were
Mm-hmm.
killing it. They had they
Okay.
they'd capitalized on it or whatever, and they're like, "Get up, you
Mm-hmm.
puss! 50 million schmillion, go make something
Yeah.
happen."
Mm-hmm.
That's who you want to be
Mm-hmm.
around
Right.
when the proverbial
Right.
what hits the
Mm-hmm.
fan.
Right.
And so get around people that want more, and don't default to people that'll pull you down. And
Mm-hmm.
and again, if it's family, love them, but proactively choose who you want
Mm-hmm.
to who you
Mm-hmm.
allow to influence you.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people give up. There's a book called Three
Mm-hmm.
Feet from the Gold. And so I would also encourage you to recognize that the most successful people on the planet are the ones that didn't give up. They have
Mm-hmm.
grit, they have
Mm-hmm.
determination,
Mm-hmm.
they have fortitude.
Mm-hmm.
And so, do it. And again, they do that by reassociating with their goals.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I did. And by the way, if you're not interested in multifamily, I did a goal setting workshop, and it's on my
Mm-hmm.
link tree. It's at
Mm-hmm.
rodslinks.com, rods plural,
Mm-hmm.
links
Mm-hmm.
plural.com. At the bottom is my goal setting workshop. It's about an hour,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a guide you can download. I'm not going to try to sell you
Mm-hmm.
anything. Have your spouse do it. You do it. Have
Mm-hmm.
your child, if they're over 10 years old, do it. Again, people spend more time planning a freaking birthday party than they do designing their lives. That's designing your life.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's rodslinks.com. And there's a bunch of free resources there as well if you're
Mm-hmm.
interested in multifamily. But the goal setting, regardless of what you're interested
Mm-hmm.
in, will help anybody. And I
Mm-hmm.
promise you'll be glad you did. It's about an hour. It's very
Mm-hmm.
powerful. Um, but and again, it's the goals that'll push you through when you get your butt kicked, your nose bloodied, and
Mm-hmm.
whatever. That's what'll get you back up to take action. It's those goals. Um, and I will tell you, don't fear problems. Don't fear failure. We all fail. Like I said,
Mm-hmm.
I've had 29
Right.
businesses. Several were tens of millions.
Mm-hmm.
Most were spectacular, flaming
Mm-hmm.
seminars. I call them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we fail our way to success. And so don't fear problems, because problems are feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you go to one of my boot camps, the day after you'll get a survey from us.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, 99.9% of the response, I don't think I've ever had a complaint on my boot camps
Mm-hmm.
out of 16,000, almost
Mm-hmm.
17,000 participants. But we do, I ask for feedback. I want to get
Right.
some
Mm-hmm.
critical feedback,
And you
because
don't
that's
want
how
the,
you
oh,
grow.
it was wonderful. You
Yeah,
want
yeah.
the,
Well, that's most of it, but
mm-hmm.
I'm looking for critical feedback. I
Right.
wish you'd
Mm-hmm.
have done this.
Mm-hmm.
Could you have
Mm-hmm.
talked about this
Mm-hmm.
more? Whatever. And that's how you grow when you
Mm-hmm.
become better. Like Henry Ford said, an airplane takes off against the wind. You
Mm-hmm.
need those problems and
Mm-hmm.
setbacks.
Mm-hmm.
It's naive to think you're not going to
Mm-hmm.
have them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the next thing I want to talk about is gratitude. And
Mm-hmm.
and I may lose some of you here
Mm-hmm.
if this sounds too foofy, but that
No,
would be a
this is one
mistake.
of the most important things, folks. Pay
Right.
attention to this. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So gratitude's the most important foundational
Mm-hmm.
emotion that we have
Mm-hmm.
available to us. It strengthens our immune system. It lowers our blood
Mm-hmm.
pressure. It brings us closer to our
Mm-hmm.
spirituality. But the biggest, well, not the biggest, but a huge thing is it's how you manifest everything you want in life.
Mm-hmm.
You do it through gratitude. And
Mm-hmm.
so most mornings I'll sit in this recliner behind me and I've got my vision boards next to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I will be grateful for the people that I have in my life,
Mm-hmm.
the blessings I have in my life,
Mm-hmm.
but then I'll do gratitude for the things that I want as if I already have them.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Like
So
I will,
manifesting it.
that's how you
Mm-hmm.
manifest
Mm-hmm.
it. And you could call it prayer if you like,
Mm-hmm.
but that you manifest through gratitude. So I'll
Mm-hmm.
sit there and sometimes I've gotten emotional being grateful for things I don't even have yet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now I may have lost some of you analytical ones on that, but ignore this at your peril. This is how I had 50 million to
Mm-hmm.
lose and how I got it back.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so because it freaking works.
Mm-hmm.
So utilize gratitude, and I'll share something with you here. And then we can take this wherever you want to take it. But you know, I immigrated to Denver, Colorado, but I
Mm-hmm.
always knew I wanted to live on the beach. And of course, there's no beach in Denver. It's
Hmm.
in the middle of the country. And so, but I would visualize the palm trees and the surf and the
Mm-hmm.
sand and 20 years later, I built this incredible mansion on the beach here in Sarasota where I
Mm-hmm.
live. And it was a Gulf to Bay. I owned the beach
Mm-hmm.
on one side, I had my boats on the back
Mm-hmm.
side, and it was like a slice through an island. And it
Mm-hmm.
was unimaginable when I was 18, but I made
Mm-hmm.
it happen 20 years
Right.
later. That's the
Right.
power of goals. I mean, just to describe this
Mm-hmm.
place, I had a giant waterfall from the second floor balcony into the pool. You had to walk through the pool waterfall to get to the pool. It was in
Oh.
magazines. The pool was it.
Mm-hmm.
Big spiral staircase up through the
Mm-hmm.
middle of the house, wine cellar, elevator. I'll land the plane with this. On the second floor, I had aquariums built around the staircase that cost me almost 200 grand. So
Mm-hmm.
this gives you an idea of the house. Well, I worked for this thing for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
2 months after I moved in, I'm
Mm-hmm.
floating in the pool at night. The pool's changing colors. It's got fiber optic lighting, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking up at this testament to my ego.
Mm-hmm.
It was to prove the world I was good
Mm-hmm.
enough. Okay. I mean,
Right.
if that
Yep.
didn't do it,
Yep.
I mean, for God's sakes,
Yeah,
give
there
it up.
was
Okay.
nothing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, my beautiful family's inside sleeping, and I had all the toys. I had the boat and the
Mm-hmm.
jet skis and
Mm-hmm.
the Maserati and the Mercedes and all the stuff that I thought was
Mm-hmm.
important at the time. So 2 months after I moved in, I'm floating, I'm looking up at this thing, and I got
Mm-hmm.
depressed. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean a little depressed. I mean, I got
Mm-hmm.
really depressed. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
what the hell's going on? I've
Mm-hmm.
just achieved success like times
Mm-hmm.
10,000. And what I realized, Deb, is a message I want to share with your listeners here is there are three things that when I look back on it that were happening.
Mm-hmm.
First thing is you should never achieve a big goal without having other goals lined
Mm-hmm.
up behind it.
Right.
Because
Mm-hmm.
like the good book says, without a vision, the people perish. You need a
Mm-hmm.
vision for your future. And I didn't know what I was going to do
Mm-hmm.
next. So that was number
Mm-hmm.
one. Number two is it's never about the goals. You
Mm-hmm.
need the goals to create that
Mm-hmm.
burning desire and hunger. But happiness comes from progress and growth.
Mm-hmm.
And you think it's the goals, but they say the happiest days of a boat owner's life are the day they buy the boat and the day they sell the boat. It's
Mm-hmm.
not about the goals. Um, but uh, but happiness comes from progress and
Mm-hmm.
growth. And if you do my goal setting workshop at Rod's Links or you come to my boot
Mm-hmm.
camp, one of the things I do is a weekly planning process.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about a 10-minute presentation,
Mm-hmm.
but it shows how I plan my week.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how I manage two very large
Mm-hmm.
companies at the same time with, upwards of 80 employees,
Mm-hmm.
focusing on what's most
Mm-hmm.
important. But one of the pieces of that process is to acknowledge any progress you made the previous week. Just
Mm.
consciously pat
Right.
yourself on the back
Mm-hmm.
and say thank you, because
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have delays, you're
Mm-hmm.
going to have setbacks, you're going
Mm-hmm.
to hit walls. But if you're progressing, you'll
Mm-hmm.
be happy. And
Right.
so
Back
it's
to
but
that
it's
gratitude thing. Mm-hmm.
well, it's important to consciously acknowledge your
Mm-hmm.
progress because you'll be happy if you're
Mm-hmm.
if you're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, that was the second thing. The third thing was I'd been totally focused on me.
Mm-hmm.
Rod. Show the
Mm-hmm.
world I'm good enough. Show the world I matter. Blah
Mm-hmm.
blah blah. Well, that's the year I met Tony Robbins. So I went and
Mm-hmm.
saw him live in Fort Lauderdale.
Mm-hmm.
This is about 22 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
22, 23 years ago. And I saw that he fed families for the holidays. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, what a concept. Do something for
Mm-hmm.
someone else. I'm embarrassed
Right.
to say I had to be 40 to get that memo.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it was 25 years ago
Mm-hmm.
because I'm 65. It
Mm-hmm.
was 40 when this happened. So anyway, I called my brother in Denver because I was going to go visit him for Thanksgiving. I
Mm-hmm.
said, bro, let's feed five families. And so
Mm-hmm.
called his church and found five families that really needed help.
Mm-hmm.
And we bought food and
Mm-hmm.
frozen turkeys, and
Mm-hmm.
they had kids. We bought toys for their kids, and had a lot of fun buying
Mm-hmm.
everything. And then the third family changed my life, Deb. We go up to this shack, which is really what it was. It was
Mm-hmm.
about 100-year-old piece of property this woman was in. It was a one bedroom. It was a crappy one bedroom because you actually had to walk through the bedroom to get to the kitchen, which had the bathroom off of it. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a Hispanic woman living there with five kids.
Mm-hmm.
And
In one
she came
bedroom.
out in not even a one bedroom. It was a crappy one bedroom because again, there's
right.
the
It was,
but
yeah.
yeah, because it was called it's a shotgun unit where you don't
Right.
have hallways. You don't have hallways. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, so she comes out and she sees all this stuff on the porch. She starts crying.
Mm-hmm.
Her kids come out, two of the older ones start crying, and I start crying, and I was hooked. Now, don't leave thinking I'm bragging here because I'm not. There's a real message in this. So you want to hear this if you want success, okay? Or whatever you want. Um, uh, since then, I have fed over 150,000 children for the holidays here in my area. I provided tens of thousands of backpacks filled with school supplies to local children that don't have the basic supplies for school. We did 2,000 just about a month ago. Um, don't get me started on that. Greatest country on earth, and kids don't have school supplies. But
Yeah, I know.
don't get me started. But anyway, and then I've given thousands and thousands of teddy bears to the local police departments for their officers to keep in their vehicles if they encounter a child that's been in a traumatic situation. I am not bragging here. There's a real message in this. We've been taught to achieve to be happy. Like we shouldn't be happy until we've achieved. See, when you give back, you're happily achieving. And I know it's a play on words. Tony Robbins calls it the science of achievement versus the art of fulfillment. Achievement's a science. If you want to learn how to do something, go study. If you want to learn multifamily, get your butt to my boot camp. I'll give you the blueprint. I'll give you the map. You just have to go do it. Okay. And like I said, you can come for $47 and I don't sell anything there. So there's no freaking excuses if you want to learn real estate. But so that's achievement. That's a science. But fulfillment is an art. You've got to figure out what juices you and incorporate that into your life right now. And don't say, well, Rod, yeah, you had money. That's why you did. Well, listen, you want money? Give back. That's how God works. That's how the universe works. What you give, you give back tenfold, a hundredfold. So figure out what juices you. For me, it's kids. Maybe for you, it's the elderly. I'm juiced by the elderly as well. I just bought my first assisted living facility. I love the elderly too. Maybe it's animals. Maybe it's the environment. Give back right now. If you don't have money, give of your time.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you, success will come faster because power moves to those who serve. We did a award ceremony at one of my live boot camps. Once a year I do a live one. I've got a live one actually coming up in LA in January, 3 days live, and you can come to that for a couple $100. It's like nothing. So I had 1,000-person boot camp in Orlando last year, and for 3 days. And again, I'm doing it again in LA in January. The same thing. We should have about 1,000 people there. But I did an award ceremony for some of my exemplary warriors, my coaching students. Okay, it was called a Hall of Fame award, and it wasn't just the ones that had the most units or anything like that. It was the ones that we felt like, were giving and supportive in the community, helped other warriors and stuff. And we did a slide for each one. And I'm noticing on the slides that every single one of them does something philanthropic. Human trafficking, veteran suicide, veterans homelessness, schools in India, schools in Latin America. And I looked at the 1,000 participants and pointed at the PowerPoint. And I said, that's what we call a clue, my friends. That's what we call a clue because power moves to those who serve. And that's one of the things we really espouse in my warrior community is leaving the world a better place. And it's very, very, very impactful and exciting. But yeah. So again, give back now, incorporate giving back into your mindset and whatever you want comes much faster.
Right.
So anyway, I can stop there.
Right. Well, oh my gosh, I've got so many questions. But I want to talk more about giving back because I'm going to, we need folks to know your organization is called the Tiny Hands Foundation. Yeah. And so we will have a link to that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's tinyhandsfoundation.org.
Yeah. And so we'll link to that.
Oh, let me interject one thing. I'm sorry. Every dime goes to food, backpacks, and teddy bears. In fact, I put my own money and I cover all the operational expenses and then some. So it's not one of these where
40% here.
Yeah, exactly. No, every dime. But anyway, love donations. Right. So I'd be very grateful. I by the way, I paid for it for 8 years in a row. In fact, and it was 2008 when I lost everything that I couldn't. I that year I paid $56,000 for the 1,600 families that I fed. But then after that, I started taking donations. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's my mentality is you have to give back and you give back what you can. You mentioned that, right? And maybe it's that you go to the soup kitchen and you stir soup. You volunteer at the animal shelter. It is good to be able to give cash, but
Mhm.
your time in many cases is far more valuable,
Mhm.
because they don't get a lot of volunteers,
Right.
for a lot of things. And it might be through your church, it might be just on your own.
Right.
And I also tell people, especially young people, it's a fabulous way to get experience that then you can use in your career. So maybe you help with fundraising. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's going to teach you how to do budgeting, all sorts of things. And so giving back should be the pillar of what you do. And plus it makes you feel good, right?
Well, I'll tell you something. I've interviewed, I don't know, 1,200 people or more.
Mhm,
Last time I counted.
mhm,
But I've interviewed some people that are mega
mhm,
millionaires,
mhm,
and I can tell if they're like I was before I
mhm,
had my epiphany when I was
mhm,
40. And
mhm.
I feel sorry for them
Right.
because they may be financially
Mhm,
successful. In
mhm.
my opinion, they're not truly successful. They're
Right.
because they're
Mhm,
not fulfilled.
mhm, mhm,
They're egocentric,
mhm,
and again, I feel sad for them.
mhm,
But they have to
mhm.
reach that epiphany on their
Right.
own.
Mhm,
So yeah.
right. And it's so true. I mean, we look at celebrities, sports figures, business people, all of those things, and you can tell, right, when there is something missing. Is probably the best way to put it in their lives. And and folks, let's be honest, there's no excuse. You can't say, now you might say, I don't have the money. Okay, well, we just talked about that. You have the time, make it a priority to
Yeah.
to do this. And it will make you feel better. And it's interesting. I spend a lot of time with sports people,
Hmm.
and I see the ones that give back and I see the ones that take.
Hmm.
And you know, the ones that give back, I mean, we've been talking about Denver, right? I don't live there any longer, and unfortunately, I didn't live there when Peyton Manning was quarterback of the Broncos. But he's probably one of the most philanthropic people around. And he's also, obviously incredibly successful. But
Hmm.
he always made a point of how could he give back. But then there were also a lot of other people on that team that were gimme, 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 take, take, take. And
Well, you can
and
you can just see it. You can even
right.
see it when
Mhm,
kids will ask for an
mhm,
autograph and
right.
things like that. The
Mhm,
ones that'll
mhm,
stop.
mhm,
Um, but
mhm,
oh, by the way, so I don't forget, I just
mhm,
realized if to get that, I was just thinking about my boot camp that's coming
mhm,
up. To get
mhm.
that $47
Ah,
price, use the code DEB when you check out.
oh,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, use the code DEB,
Perfect.
yeah, because otherwise it's I don't know, it's probably 300-400 bucks for the
Mhm,
ticket.
mhm.
So use the code DEB for the $47 ticket. Yeah.
Cool. Perfect.
Okay. Yeah, and that's it.
Well,
And that's at rodslinks.com.
okay,
My boot camp site is
okay,
there, and there's a bunch of free
okay,
books there. There's my
okay,
goal setting workshop there. My social media is
okay.
there. But I
Mhm.
just didn't want to forget that
Right. Perfect.
before we
I
cut
love
off.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is, I mean, right there, you're giving back, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's sometimes where people get confused is, what it means to give back. It's okay. You're giving of your knowledge. And I think that's something that is so critical for people to recognize. So maybe they're teaching, maybe they're doing
and
seminars.
and and
Mhm,
and when you can get pleasure from that, you can't see
mhm,
the wall behind me here, but I have literally hundreds of thank you cards. You
mhm,
can kind of
mhm,
see them.
mhm,
Hundreds of thank you cards
mhm,
for my students on the
mhm,
wall, literally
mhm,
covered with thank you
mhm.
cards.
Right.
It used to
Mhm,
what used to motivate me was the
mhm,
Lamborghini, which I've had, the
mhm,
Rolls Royce, the Bentley,
mhm.
all the stuff I've
Yeah.
had, millions of dollars worth of
Mhm,
watches, which I've had,
mhm,
the big
mhm,
houses. But that doesn't juice me anymore.
mhm,
What
mhm,
juices me is those
mhm.
cards, the
Right.
gifts, the
Mhm,
DMs, the emails I get
mhm,
every
mhm,
single day from
mhm,
people,
mhm,
sending me love.
mhm,
Because,
mhm,
like this last
mhm,
weekend, I had hundreds of people
mhm,
just come up to me and
mhm,
say their lives have been
mhm,
changed, for the
mhm,
better because of this
mhm.
technology and what
Right.
they're
Mhm,
they're doing with it. And
right.
so
Mhm,
it's your goals do change over
mhm,
time,
mhm,
because I could care less about the material
mhm,
stuff anymore. I really
mhm,
could.
mhm,
I'm more about experiences
mhm,
now and the joy I get
mhm,
from.
mhm.
And it's not hyperbole. This is not
Right.
like Google
Mhm,
bullshit. This is real. I
mhm,
mean, this is
mhm,
this is as you evolve,
mhm,
your
mhm,
your your priorities
mhm.
change.
Right.
Yeah.
And we need money.
For
We
sure.
have
For sure.
mortgages we have to pay, all of
Sure.
those
Sure.
things.
Sure.
But yeah, it's interesting, when you talk about that. I remember one of the times, so I do professional speaking, right? About several different topics, but this was, I had was talking with a chamber about my presentation, and and scheduling it, and all those various things. And we get to the end, and I said, now, I do need to tell you the fee. And I got silence, crickets, right? And what they told me was, well, we thought that you didn't charge because you're doing what you love. And I said, okay, I do love what I'm doing, but I have to pay a mortgage. I can't get a tank of gas on love. It'd be nice if it worked that way, right? But yeah, so there's always a, a, a compensation that's in there, because what I actually told that organization: give me a membership. If you don't pay, that's fine. I understand that, but I want a membership, and they did. So there's all those things. But I want to talk about there's, like I said, I was just furiously scribbling little notes here as you were talking. I really want to talk more about goals, because, as you said, that is, we absolutely have to have them. I am a marketing person by trade. And so one of the things that we were told was, you have to have BHAGs, big,
Yeah,
hairy.
let me elaborate on goals. It just let me elaborate. So first of all, they have to be measurable.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Number one.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have to know when you get there.
Correct. You can't say I'm going to lose some weight. I'm going to lose 10 pounds by January 1st and freaking love it. Okay. That's a goal. Now, what's more important than the goals, or definitely as important, if not more important, is why the goals are an absolute must. Okay.
Yes.
So you write down the goals,
Mm-hmm.
but then you write down why you have to achieve them.
Mm-hmm.
And you use emotionally charged words. Words are very, very powerful. So that I can show my kids what amazing success looks like. So I can retire my beautiful wife or husband, so that we can live the life of our dreams and go do whatever we want, whenever we want, with whoever we want, whenever, whatever. And so, but they have to be emotionally charged. And so write down why the goals are an absolute freaking must to achieve. Okay. But then I put a spin on it. Write down what happens if you don't achieve the goal, and make it hurt.
Okay. Right.
Make it painful, because as human beings, we'll do more to avoid pain than gain pleasure. So you use this. This is the fuel. This is the fuel to push you. So besides the positive why, put negative reasons if you don't achieve. So I don't feel like a failure. So I don't fail my children.
Right.
So I don't
My
fail my
wife has to
husband or
keep
wife.
working, whatever.
So I don't live a life of regret, and make it hurt. And because again, as humans, we'll do more to avoid pain and gain than gain pleasure. And this is what pushes you. This is what creates that hunger, where you get up early in the morning, you stay up late at night, you do whatever the hell you have to do to achieve what you want. You grind for a few years like most people won't, so you live the rest of your life like most people can't.
Right.
So let me say that, and then get pictures of your goals. Like I'll show you
right.
something.
Vision
here.
boards.
Yeah, no, I've got vision boards, but I'll show you something here. This is my planner. I'm a dinosaur. I use a paper planner. Well, in the back of this thing, I don't think you can see it actually, but I'm just going to print here.
Oh, look at all those pictures. Right.
Yeah, first pictures are my gratitude pictures. Okay, but then I've got pictures of the things that I wanted. Okay. What's crazy is this top picture looks just like the house I built on the beach before I built it. This bottom picture looks just like the compound I live in now, which is on the bay. I've got 6 buildings. But then, stuff like the watches. I've got, I don't know, at least easily $1.5 million worth of watches, the Lamborghini before I got it, the Rolls Royce, the Bentley, all this stuff that I thought was important. These pictures have been in here probably 25 years. Okay. And I've got just about everything in here. So, get pictures of your goals, put them around you. I've got them on the wall. In my exercise room, I've got them on the wall.
It helps you work toward them.
Well, it keeps them in your mind's eye. And it triggers your subconscious to focus on what you want, not what you don't want. Yeah.
Right. Well, and of course, the absolute critical thing to remember is they are always evolving, because, as you said, they're measurable. Okay. So you got, you made $100 million by X date. What's next? It's not just that you get to that goal and stop. And I think that's, that's kind of what you were talking about when you were saying, you were in the pool and got depressed. You'd made your goals. Well, what are those next goals?
Yeah, that was one of the things. Yeah, and one of the things I do in my workshop is I have you put a time limit on each goal
Mm-hmm.
and rank them.
Right.
And that
Mm-hmm.
also makes a big
Mm-hmm.
difference.
Mm-hmm.
And guess at it. You guess
Mm-hmm.
at it, but and remembering that people will
Mm-hmm.
overestimate what they can do in a
Mm-hmm.
year and massively
Right.
underestimate
Mm-hmm.
what they can do
Mm-hmm.
in 5, 10, or 20
Right.
years.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Mhm.
and the goals have to be attainable. It
Right.
can't be
Well,
I'm going to
they have
lose
to be
a
attainable in
hundred
your mind.
pounds. Mm-hmm.
They have to
Yes.
be they have
Mm-hmm.
to be
Mm-hmm.
attainable in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
They may seem unrational, but if you
Mm-hmm.
believe that it's
Right. Mm-hmm.
possible, that's the key.
Mm-hmm.
That's the
Right.
absolute key. If you
Mm-hmm.
want to be a billionaire, you
Mm-hmm.
have to believe you
Mm-hmm.
can be a
Right.
billionaire.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if
Mm-hmm.
because if it's too much and you don't
Mm-hmm.
believe it, it's not
Mm-hmm.
going to happen.
Right. Yeah, and I
But
think
the
that's.
but the
Mm-hmm.
key the key is
Mm-hmm.
to manifest as if you already
Mm-hmm.
have it.
Mm-hmm.
Give thanks as if
Mm-hmm.
you already have it.
Mm-hmm.
Feel the way you'd feel as if you
Right.
already have it.
Mm-hmm.
That is the key.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Every great thought
Mm-hmm.
leader in the space that talks about
Mm-hmm.
manifestations, it says the same
Mm-hmm.
thing. Believe as if
Mm-hmm.
it's already done.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
One of the things that I do outside this podcast is I work with people who have been diagnosed with cancer because that's me.
Mhm.
And years ago, I worked for an absolutely fabulous oncologist. And
Mhm.
one of the things that he would tell the patients when they were very first diagnosed is 99% of this journey is in your head. If you think you're going to live, you will live. If you think you're going to die, you will die. Now, he didn't put a time frame on it because it might be that you thought you were going to live and it was 5 days. But what did you do in those 5 days? Did you live like, and there's songs, right? Country and Western songs, probably, that, well, there actually is, right? Live like you were dying. But how are you going to do that, right? Are you living your utmost? The other thing I tell people is I don't want my cask or my headstone to say, I wish I would have. And so don't put off a lot of those things. We talk about bucket lists, and it's great to have things that you want to do, but why say I want to do this in 20 years? What can you do to make it happen sooner? And all of those things. And so it comes back to exactly what you're saying. What is your mindset? Manifest it. If you want to travel to Italy, then have pictures of Italy around, in multiple places, right? You're getting ready in the morning, so it's on the mirror. It's, all those things, because then everything you do is working toward that. And I love that you talk so much about mindset, because there's that saying, right? If we think we can, we can. If we don't, we don't. And that is so true. And if you think, well, I'm not smart enough, pretty enough, whatever, then you aren't. But if you think I can do this, and it's not.
Yeah, that saying is whether you think you can or you can't, you're right.
Right. Yes. And it's not about your ego. And I think that's one of the things that so many people get so concerned about, is they will say that, if I'm thinking, hey, this is absolutely bragging about myself, to say no, if you think you can do it, then do it. And it's not that you are so egotistical. It's that you know what you're about. And I think that is kind of, one of the other things that people think is, well, it's it is egotistical to think all that. I shouldn't be bragging about myself. Well, folks, if you don't brag about yourself a lot, no one else will.
Well, and bragging may be the wrong word. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah, the
uh,
bragging is kind of a negative. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, bottom line is you have to have confidence, and
Right.
nobody's born
Mm-hmm.
with confidence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you do
Mm-hmm.
have to promote
Mm-hmm.
yourself,
Right. Mm-hmm.
if you're trying to
Mm-hmm.
build something, and I try to be as non-braggadocious as
Mm-hmm.
I can.
Mm-hmm.
I don't show pictures of the
Mm-hmm.
Bentley or the
Right.
Lambo
Mm-hmm.
or any of that stuff
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of thought leaders
Mm-hmm.
do. I try to be as authentic as I can.
Mm-hmm.
I've failed in the
Mm-hmm.
past. That's why I bought the Lambo to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Is I was showing off. But again, and I think a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people, um, want beautiful things like
Hmm.
that. It's just that like I said, your
Hmm.
goals will evolve, they will
Hmm.
change. Hopefully they'll become
Hmm.
more altruistic.
Hmm.
That's my hope for
Hmm.
you. But
Right.
anyway, yeah.
Well, and one of the other things I wrote down, and this was something that I got from your book was, and what you were saying is also you have to have that team. You mentioned it, and sometimes when you get so caught up in the bragging, your team is going to go, uh, really? Now if you're sharing with your team, that's different. But if it's I'm better than you, no.
Well,
Um,
you won't have a team
right.
if that's your
Hmm.
mindset.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
need to be a
Hmm.
servant leader. If
Hmm.
you're a leader,
Hmm.
there are a
Hmm.
lot of, we could have
Right.
talked about
Hmm.
leadership, the things that you
Hmm.
need to embody to be
Hmm.
a leader, like integrity
Hmm. Hmm.
and compassion
Hmm.
and support and
hmm
validation and
hmm
praise, and that's
hmm
how you
hmm
effectively
hmm
a kick-ass
hmm
team is
right.
through all of
Hmm.
those things.
Right.
Yeah.
And as you were saying, giving back. When you give back to those on your team, and
Yeah.
sometimes just telling them thank you,
Sure. No,
right?
like I went to an apartment complex this last weekend,
Hmm.
and I gave a thank you
Hmm.
card with $500 to
Hmm.
this new employee,
Hmm.
and said, I was really impressed with your
Hmm.
integrity, and
Hmm.
I'm super grateful to be able to
Hmm.
work with you.
Hmm.
And I can tell you the card was more
Hmm.
important than the money.
Yes. Hmm.
I to them,
Hmm.
it is every
Right.
time.
I bet yes,
It's that
they have saved
acknowledgement
that
that,
card like you
yeah,
did. Hmm.
that
Hmm.
acknowledgement is more
Right.
important than the money.
Hmm.
The money helps,
Hmm.
sure,
Hmm.
but you know, um, and that's,
Hmm.
you build a culture like
Hmm.
that. You build a supportive culture. I
Hmm.
remember, when I had a big litigation support
Hmm.
company, there's about 60 or 70
Hmm.
employees in that company. You build a culture, you have a lot of
Hmm.
fun. I remember, we do all sorts of things, and
Hmm.
I'd self-deprecate to make people laugh,
Hmm.
and wear goofy clothes, and we did all sorts of fun
Hmm.
things, and I did a goal setting session for
Hmm.
my employees, and
Hmm.
and there were tears,
Hmm.
as people never really
Hmm.
sat and did their
Hmm.
goals like that before.
Right.
And so, you know these are the sorts of things, when you empower your people, you help them
Hmm.
reach their goals. I think
Hmm.
somebody said, you want the wealthiest people are the ones that create other people, or
Hmm.
help other people create
Hmm.
wealth.
Hmm.
And so yeah,
Right.
that's the right mindset.
Right. And I think the thing to remember is that each person defines success differently. They define wealth differently, right? For some, it is the fancy cars, the big houses. For others, it's that they can sit down and have a glass of wine and enjoy the birds on their back deck, right? And so I think that's the other thing to remember for folks is my definition of success is different than your definition of success. But how can I help you meet yours?
Right.
Um, I have recently started mentoring a young student at the University of Colorado. She is a freshman, and she is the first person in her family to go to college. And
Wow.
and oh, smart. I spent 10 minutes with this young woman and was blown away by her.
Nice.
But I also, you know, I send her encouraging memes, statements, things like that all the time because I want her to remember that she is valued. And especially as an 18-year-old, right? Sometimes that's really hard. But
Sure.
how, and that comes back to the giving back, right? How can you reach out and help someone? And that takes me 5 minutes on a Sunday, you know but and we're just starting to work together, so I hope it's much more. But folks, the giving back, I don't think we can emphasize it enough as to just how absolutely important and critical it is.
Yeah. I don't disagree. I mean, listen, yeah, we could have a whole conversation about, and I'll tell you something. I've been doing the feeding and all
Mm-hmm.
that for 25 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm really on the verge of shifting to something
Mm-hmm.
else. And that is, something I've always wanted to do, was build schools in like Latin America,
hmm
but
hmm
not just build the school,
hmm
actually build an infrastructure so
Right.
the school self-supports.
Right. They
Like
have
buy enough.
teachers, they
No,
have
no, no, no,
books,
no, no,
all of
no, no.
those
That's not
things.
that's not what I
hmm
mean. That's not
Oh,
what I
okay.
mean. Build enough of an like buy enough land so you can have an
hmm
agricultural
Okay. Okay.
infrastructure that supports the
Oh,
school,
great.
or build a tech
hmm
center,
hmm
and they can do
hmm
AI work or
hmm
tech work
hmm
that supports the school, maybe even
hmm
supports the
hmm
community. Yeah, I've been threatening to do
hmm
that for about a decade, and I think
hmm
I'm on the verge of
I
pushing
love
forward on
that.
that.
hmm
Yeah,
I love that.
rather than feeding them
hmm
fish, teach them how
hmm
to fish, right?
hmm Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, oh my gosh, Rod, this is we didn't even talk about becoming a multifamily investor,
Right.
all those
Yeah.
things. This has been far more important. And people can find that at your website and
Sure.
with your book.
Sure.
But tell us, and I will have all these links obviously in the show notes, but tell us how they find you and what are the
Yeah.
services you
Sure.
provide.
So go to rodslinks.com,
Mhm,
rodslinks.com.
mhm,
My boot camp site is there. Remember to use the code DEB when you check out for that
mhm,
$47 price. And there's
mhm,
like $3,000 worth of bonuses that
mhm,
comes with that. I
mhm,
mean, it's truly a no-brainer because I don't sell anything
mhm,
at my virtual events.
mhm,
It's 2 days of training, nothing
mhm,
being sold for, like I say, I'll
mhm,
do it for your peeps for
mhm,
47 bucks. So no excuses. And you do it at home in your underwear.
mhm,
Okay, it's literally virtual and it's
mhm,
live though. I mean,
mhm,
I'll take
mhm,
questions live,
mhm,
and we'll have panels every day,
mhm,
and it's a lot of fun. But
mhm,
on that Rod's links is also on my social media. If you ask
mhm,
me a question there, I answer every
mhm,
question. And there's a free book section, and these are
mhm,
best in class books
mhm,
about different aspects of
mhm,
my business.
mhm,
I mean, they're free, but they're
mhm,
I could sell them on Amazon. They're that
mhm,
good.
mhm,
Okay. And then there's my goal setting
mhm,
workshop. Like I said, you could
mhm,
do that. You should do that,
mhm.
even if you're not interested in real
Right.
estate.
Mhm,
But uh, but yeah, that's the best place.
mhm,
And listen to my podcast. My
mhm,
podcast link is there.
mhm,
It's the best. It's the largest in
mhm,
the world,
mhm,
and I'm bragging now, but
mhm,
it's truth. It's factual
mhm,
for what I do.
mhm,
And so I'm doing something right.
mhm,
And I hope you'll check it out
mhm,
because we have a lot of fun on it.
mhm,
And it's not just multifamily. We're talking
mhm,
a lot about senior housing. There's 10,000
mhm,
people a day turning 65 in
mhm,
this country.
mhm,
Senior housing
mhm,
is a huge need in
mhm,
this country, and other
mhm,
commercial real estate asset
mhm,
classes. So it's a wide
mhm,
ranging conversation
mhm.
there. So yeah, but I appreciate you having
Great.
me on, Deb. This
I
has been a
love
lot of
it.
fun.
I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah,
And we will have you on again because we just scratched the surface on all of this. But
right.
until then, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
Well, the final thought would be, if you're not happy with your current lot in life, I mean, not thrilled. If you're not thrilled, you may be happy and you may be comfortable, and the comfort zone's a nice warm place, and we all know nothing freaking grows there. So you need to do more. Go do my goal setting workshop. See if that inspires you to pick a side hustle or to rethink what you're doing, because this life is not a dress rehearsal. This is your life. So you want to maximize it. Don't fear failure, fear regret. Let's not have any regrets. That would be my final thought. I can't hear you. Your voice just went out.
There we went. I'm back.
There you go.
Sorry about
Okay.
that. Um, so this really has been just absolutely fascinating. I am, and I can't wait to chat with you again. I'm Deb Creer. I've been having a wonderful conversation with Rod Khleif. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.